All right, let's get some business done before we jump into it today. First off, if you have any health issues at all, whether it's chronic or whatever, or you just have a general interest in living a longer and healthier life, and you want to get on track with things and, preserve the health that you have, you got to check out my man, Christian Yordanov, over at livelongerformula.com/big truth. Use that link, and you'll get some extra bonus stuff. He's going to hook you up with more for using our link. But Christian's he's been on the podcast. Go check out his episode. He's a functional health practitioner and an author, and he's been helping me for a few months, like 6 months now. And I firsthand experience, like it's data-driven protocols that he comes up with you based on some testing you do, and also just you in-depth interviews he does with you. He's going to spend more time with you in the first week than your primary care has spent with you in the last 15 years. So check it out, livelongerformula.com/big truth, and he will get you situated and feeling better and on the way to a longer, healthier life. If you need artwork of any kind, whether it's a postcard piece of art or, a full-size poster, for your house, for your apartment, for your shop, for your garage, your tattoo shop, your cubicle, whatever, check out tattooflashcollective.com. They got you covered. Not only do they have different size art prints, and obviously they have Tattoo Flash. If you have a tattoo shop, it should be the first place you hit up. But they also have all different kinds of like paper options that you can have the same artwork printed on, whether you just want like a simple poster paper, or you want like a museum, like archival quality print that'll be a family heirloom. You can check it all out there, tattooflashcollective.com. If you use the promo code Big Truth at checkout, you get 10% off your order. If you're a back channel subscriber, you get an even bigger discount. What is the back channel? Well, that's the Big Truth Patreon. That's where we get more in depth, hit harder, have more features, early access, get more involved in the show, have giveaways, all kinds of stuff going on there. We just go deeper there. So check it out. Patreon.com/big truth. There's all different levels of patronage there. If you want to support the show, you can use one of the paid options, or if you just want to join, there's a free option. So just sign up and get more involved. And, all the levels of patronage have different benefits that come with it. So check it out. If you're into motorcycles at all, check out my shop, choppahead.com, CHOPPAHEAD. That's because most of you aren't local. Now, if you are local or visit in New England, come to the shop. It's a brick and mortar shop, 13 County Road, East Freetown, Massachusetts. We're a full service Harley Davidson shop. Any year Harley and whatever you need, whether you need an oil change or a full custom chopper or a full custom motorcycle built or performance work, whatever it is you want to do, we do it. Again, choppahead.com. If you aren't local and just want to get some shop swag, go there. Check it out. We got some 25th anniversary gear that's coming. By the time this episode comes out, it should already be in the store, and it's killer. So go check it out, grab some stuff. For more information on the podcast, just go to bigtruthpodcast.com. And there's also a shop link there if you want to rock some show apparel and rep out there in the world. I greatly appreciate it. But without further ado, this is a wild one. I got my man Rabbi Rothschild coming on, and we talk about all kinds of wild stuff. A little bit about religion, but a lot of it about his program where he's doing like 24/7 live streaming of his life. We get into a lot of future technology stuff, and fringe science stuff, and UFO disclosure stuff. It's a wild one, so stick around.
Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Yes, once again, we have liftoff. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Big Truth Podcast and broadcasting live. I got a special guest today, my man Rabbi Rothschild, who's a futurist, a researcher, a rabbi, a scholar, and someone that's into and involved in a lot of the things that you guys are interested in. So without further ado, I'm going to let him take it from here. Rabbi, if you want to introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about your background and you know what you're into and what you got going on. I know you have a 24/7, you know, like Truman Show style live stream project that you've been doing for a few years, and I know you're into disclosure and UFO stuff and future and transhumanism stuff. We talked a little bit offline, but yeah, man, why don't you introduce yourself and you know, let the audience know a little bit about you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, first and foremost. It's a pleasure to be here. You're absolutely right. I'm Rabbi Rothschild. I stream my life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for world peace. I've been doing so for more than 4 years. My streams go back to the pandemic. We've seen the death of a queen, the birth of AI, the coronation of a king, and everything in between. This is a real life Truman Show, a real life Big Brother. This is a timeline and a time capsule of human achievement. In the 1990s, the phrase content is king was coined, and I'm making it true today in my own way. I'm king of the internet. And here's why. In 2017, The Economist magazine stated that data had overtaken petroleum as Earth's #1 resource. And I have more data archived on the internet than any person ever, which is making me very influential. I'm going viral. And when I do, I want to make you, your friends, your family, and your audience all financially independent if you're not already. I want to ensure that you have generational wealth if you don't already. And I want you all to be able to start charities and philanthropic organizations of your own.
And that's a noble pursuit because, you know, I always feel like that, like if people achieve wealth, one of the best things you can do is kind of spread it around because high tide brings all ships up. Right.
That's absolutely right.
So before we get into the other stuff, why don't we talk about your live stream project? What prompted that? And it's 24/7. So even when you're sleeping, the camera's just on you watching you sleep.
Absolutely. I think that I'm gathering an important amount of data, especially about human sleep cycle, circadian rhythms, even dreams. What prompted it was, well, by trade, in addition to being a rabbi, I'm a certified project management professional. I've successfully launched apps on the App Store and Google Play and have been a contractor with Fortune 100 organizations. And it was during the pandemic when my job went from being in person, suit and tie every day, to working remote. And I went from never being on camera to being on camera for anywhere between 8 hours for work and another few hours for some of the events in my religious community. And I essentially became extremely comfortable being on camera, having about half of my daily life already being filmed or streamed. And it would be after work. I found that one of my hobbies is golf. I like to golf. And I would go to Tiger Woods' golf course in Anaheim, California, and not too far from where I'm based. And I would hit golf balls. And I wanted to see what my golf swing looked like. And I took out my iPhone and I would record my backswing and see if I could make any improvements. And sometimes I would make little jokes to myself, knowing that I was on camera, whether I sliced the ball or hooked the ball or topped the ball, whatever it may have been. And I thought, you know what, my future family may find these home videos to be interesting of their dear old dad before they were even a glimmer in my eye. And so I would, at the end of each round, upload the data when I got home in the evening. And it was taking me a long time, and I was getting throttled just using data. And I recognized that, you know what, I'm already live streaming because of work and my other community events about 12 hours a day. Why not just do the other half? And so I bought basically like overall 33 different devices because I felt if I'm going to record myself, I want to do it better than anybody's ever done it in global history. And I put them around myself so that people who are viewing me have a portal into my life 24 hours a day. They can view my life in 360 degrees. And the data that I'm archiving is, I feel, of extreme importance. It's not just a story of my life, but 24 hours a day, I have a radio going on in the background that's archiving world history events. So just as I previously said, we've seen the death of a queen, the birth of AI. And when I say that, I started streaming in fall of 2021. Large language models were not regularly used until 2022. I was an early adopter of ChatGPT in November of 2022 and a user when it launched November 30th, 2022. So I've actually seen large language models and how they've affected society. And I have it on camera and how it's been able to replace our jobs in many ways and for some people and been able to make strides in human society. And I plan on basically not only being able to tell my story, also world history and the story of AI. And it's perhaps not its exact birth, but certainly its major usage within from large language models within human society and our overall zeitgeist. And it's been already about 4 years or so, a little less than from when ChatGPT was launched, and we've been able to see its competitors, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, Meta AI, DeepSeek, you name it, and all of the different advancements. And we're going to continue to see these things. And I think people of the future will study my stream to learn how we've been able to adjust to these different developments. And also, AI itself needs human models, human examples on which to build its models. And I have more human data on which AI models can build their AI engines can build their models than any person ever. I'm essentially the biggest example of human data that's available to AI, and I think that's going to have a dramatic impact on the accuracy of its models and my role within that data.
So you're like a 24/7 living time capsule for the future, for people to go back, or for people to study now, or AI to study now, or you're also thinking in the future people can look back and look at all this data, like it's all preserved in real time right now.
That's ex- that's exactly right. You can go back to any moment of any day, essentially of my life for the last 4 years, almost 5 years, and know not only what I was doing, but what was going on in world events. And I think that will be studied perhaps a year from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. If I were doing this project 100 years ago and video had not yet been a suitable medium, I would be a journalist or someone writing in a journal or a diarist, someone writing in a diary. And if you know anything from history, and historians very much use diaries of people of the past to get an accurate representation of what life was like on a daily basis. And because I'm just so fortunate to be living in a time where I can not only archive my life, but also share it with the world, I choose to because I know the value that it may have to the world in the future.
And are you feeding in any of this video or this data into any of ChatGPT or any of the other language models, or is it just
Yes. So
go ahead?
I
Sorry.
do. So many times I have ChatGPT write summaries of a 12-hour video of myself. What it will do is take a transcript and be able to very accurately summarize what was going on in the video. And then I can use that for descriptions and such. I also I create robots, or I call them robots. They're really macros. But these I feel are going to have a major effect on society. What I have these robots do is to create blog entries on whatever topic I may find interesting, whether it's time travel or teleportation or telekinesis or life extension, whatever they may be. And they basically publish while I'm asleep blog articles on my behalf. And I think people will find them interesting in the future to some extent. Are they written by AI? Absolutely. But when most people have their computers not working while they're asleep, I always have something going. So if anybody's interested, you can generally just search Rabbi Rothschild in Google and find much of my information. I also do handwritten, or I should say more personal blogs at my blog, rabbirothschild.medium.com. And those are on topics that are more near and dear to my heart, and I have much more oversight of. But yes, in addition from providing in addition to providing summaries of my live streams, I'm using AI 24 hours a day to be able to generate content.
Yeah, I noticed because when you first hit me up, I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it might have been a joke for a minute because you see the irony of your name being Rabbi Rothschild, and then like on a conspiracy show like Rothschild. That name has a lot of connotation. So I was like, is this guy for real? And I looked you up and I was like, man, you are publishing like a madman. But now it makes sense that you have your like agents or your bots doing some of that stuff for you. So it's great. Now, do you proofread that stuff and do you find that it's pretty on point? Like I know the stuff you write directly, obviously, but the stuff that you have bots generating for you, is it seem pretty accurate or good?
It does, and it's excellent. And I have it with pictures, and yeah. So when I awake, after I have time to get my bearings and such, I'll review what was published the night before and make sure it's accurate. If I need to make any changes, I do. But I'll just give it an overall summary. And I find that the articles are really interesting. They're on topics that affect society, on culture, on society, on technology, and they're basically a snapshot of where we are in 2026. And I think perhaps maybe studied from a by future generations, or just even people who find out about my project, about where my interests are and where we stand in the modern age.
Yeah. And so when you decided to do this and stream 24 hours a day, what made you just want to stream 24 hours a day and not just take like those 12-hour chunks and condense them into, just like uploads that, like of like the highlights? Like what made you just want to have it running like all the time?
Yeah. So I found that I originally started the project actually in summer 2021, and I would just use a GoPro and film myself streaming IRL anywhere from as far north as Santa Barbara, California, to San Diego, California, as far west as the Pacific Ocean, as far east as the desert and mountains, and Beverly Hills, and of course, Los Angeles, Disneyland, really all over, and just archiving my travels. But I would find that maybe something would be really interesting that would happen to me, and I wouldn't have it on camera. And during my time with the GoPros, I felt like, man, I wish I could really have not just one stream going all the time, but redundant streams going all the time to get different angles. And in case one of the apps crash, or I get a battery that runs out or something like that. So it was a trial and error process.
Mm.
And when you are uploading like 12 hours worth of data, it takes a long time to do generally. And over the course of a month or so, you will get throttled by your ISP when you're downloading something and re uploading it. Streaming is a little different because you're not having to store that data. Not in the same way. And so I just found the streaming was just much more efficient than the traditional create a 12-hour video, or save it on an SD card or some type of hard drive and re-upload it. And just, I would say, probably practicality of getting throttled from my ISP, getting throttled from my different cellular providers, that in order to make sure that the data was available and in a timely fashion, streaming seemed like the best option. And while I do run into issues with streaming, like anybody does who streams a lot, it's much more efficient to stream than it is to download a video. I mean, the process of not streaming is basically recorded on an iPhone or on a GoPro or something like that, and then upload it to the cloud or to a YouTube or something like that. And if anybody is aware, like YouTube, when you upload something to YouTube, many times there's a certain waiting period that you have to go through while moderation is checked and administration is checked and copyright is checked. And that can take some time,
Oh yeah.
especially on a 12-hour video.
Yeah. Just doing an hour
So
video takes forever for it to upload on YouTube. So I can't imagine 12. It probably happens. It probably takes almost 12 hours to do.
that's exactly right. And you run into this issue where you are editing, and I found I wasn't doing that much editing, but I might have to like cut a video up into different portions in order to have it fit on whatever the given platform was, and it's just taking too much time. And I'm comfortable with who I am, and I recognize that people are going to be able to learn from my stream. Really, when I talk about that this is for world peace, I mean it. I want people of the world to recognize that we're all not that different. No matter your race, background, creed, nation, we are not all that different. We have a lot of commonalities as the human race. And I want people to be able to see that we all laugh, that we all sneeze, that we all eat, that we all sleep, that we all have to use the restroom, and all of the other aspects of what it is to be a human. And in addition, this gives me a platform to not only discuss peace, but to discuss the major issues that I feel are challenging the human race, like ending world hunger. And I'd like to do this by at least educating people on technology to be able to do this, like perhaps things like agricultural drones, floating greenhouses, saltwater greenhouses, things like hydroponics, vertical farming, cloud seeding. I want to help end world thirst. I'm actually already sponsored by a cryptocurrency that's worth tens of millions of dollars. And one of the things that we do is we build wells and water towers in developing nations for the benefit of the less fortunate. And we've already done this. I want to continue these kinds of projects, especially when I have a much larger influence. Additionally, I want to make sure people are educated on topics such as life straws and water desalination, where we pump Earth's seawater onto land to make it drinkable. In my opinion, there's no reason why we should ever have droughts, why anybody should go without water or food with the technology that we have. And I feel a lot of this has to do with education, and that's education of the masses, but also education of for those in power, recognizing that there could be a lot of benefit by ending some of the world's problems. And overall, I want people to recognize that there are people who are leaders for peace and want a better world. And when I was a kid, people used to talk about peace. There were atoms for peace and nuclear programs for peace. And just the general peace movement of the 1960s was a thing that seems to have faded to some extent. And I'd like to regenerate it. I'd like people to know that there are people out there who want peace. John Lennon and Yoko Ono did something in the 1970s known as a bed-in, which was on two occasions, once in Amsterdam and the other in Quebec, or in Montreal, I should say, where they basically stayed in bed for an entire week just promoting peace. And while I do go outside and I do IRL streaming and such, much of my streams is from one location promoting peace. And in my own way, this is a modern day bed-in, so to speak, promoting peace. And the more people we can get to talk about peace, I feel the closer we will get to it. And people may say, well, Rabbi, I don't think we'll ever have peace. And I'll say, that's a fine take. However, I'm a futurist. I'm a in my own way, a transhumanist. I think in terms of not 1 or 10 years, but in 100 or 1,000 years.
Mm.
And I've studied colonial nations before, and generally, colonial nations cannot have a civil war, cannot have internal strife, or have to limit internal strife if they're going to explore. And in the same way, we on Earth will have to address our internal conflicts if we are to explore the solar system and eventually further distances. And so it's just a matter of time, in my opinion, that we either destroy each other or that we are able to come to some peaceful conclusions to be able to do this exploring. And while this may not happen in the next decade, I'm more positive that it could happen within the next century, and most certainly within the next millennium.
Yeah. So that's a lot to, there's a lot that you just dropped on us. So there's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, I mean, so you feel like space exploration is one of the things that could potentially unite humanity. It's like, it's a common cause or a common goal. And help people get over everything. So, I mean, just a couple of like, I want to get into all this stuff with you because I like the heavy and the deep stuff, but just a couple of logistical questions I just had about your project because it's so interesting. And one is, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but did you have to change, or did you find that you changed anything in your life once you started going 24/7, whether it's just because of convenience or like it's a hassle to do things that you used to do? Now that you're streaming all the time and things like that, because it becomes more of a production issue or things like that?
Yes. So prior to live streaming, I would attend shul or synagogue 3 times a day. And I have basically had to live in a virtual world since then, just because many people in my community probably wouldn't be comfortable with me live streaming our services, even though our services did go virtual for a period during the pandemic. They have since, of course, since the pandemic become back in person attendance. Additionally, I when I use the restroom or shower and things, I have to be careful of what is published to the different platforms. Some of them have um, different terms and conditions than others.
Sure.
So, like when I shower, I'll usually do it, have the camera above my waist, or I'll wear like swimming trunks or something. And then when I go to the bathroom, many times I will just put this on a GoPro. Though I do have many times of going to the bathroom on camera that's archived on different platforms. Some platforms um, are more allowing of what kind of content you can have than others. But I mean, I have everything from going to the bathroom on camera. I've had to vomit on camera.
Yeah.
I brush my teeth on camera, shave my beard on camera. All of the things that someone might do from a hygiene standpoint. And other things that I find, because I stream so much, don't I travel, but I don't travel as much as I once did, just because of the importance of me having good connectivity and probably driving as well. I love to drive. I love to go on either road trips or just drive around LA. And generally, because of connectivity, and it can just get dangerous, I have found that it's best to do desktop streams instead of IRL. And then I would say, previously in my life, I did not use Discord, and now I'm not just a top 1% Discord user, nor a top 0.1% Discord user. According to my Discord roundup for 2025, I'm a top 0.01% Discord user. So I'm like the most powered user of Discord that you can have. And I have a community which is available at discord.me/rabbi of about 3,000 individuals, some of whom live alongside me 24 hours a day. I have people who live in my Discord with me, and while they may not be streaming their life to YouTube or whatever, they're streaming within my Discord, and they're observing my life on a 24/7 basis, and they recognize the power of this project and that it has the opportunity to perhaps be the one of the, if not the biggest event in global history, because of its opportunity to be able to unite, because of the different platforms that gives me to be able to discuss some of the important um, issues of the world, and just that it's the world's largest timeline or time capsule of human achievement, and that is incredibly powerful as well. Just about anyone who learns about my project is fascinated by it. They recognize that this is a huge undertaking that absolutely could change the world. It's just going to take an event, doing enough podcasts or having enough people find out about me, that it will have a catalyst event. And when I say I want to make people rich from this, I mean it. And some people may say, okay, Rabbi, how are you going to make us all rich? Well, I've already said data is Earth's number one resource. It has surpassed petroleum. So basically, I am the largest holder of an individual's data that's been archived on the internet. We're going to be able to monetize that data. We're also going to be able to monetize my social media. I have more social media than any person on earth. I have over 100 YouTube accounts, over 200 Instagram accounts, over 500 Twitch accounts, over 1,000 TikTok accounts, over 2,000 Twitter accounts, over 5,000 Blue Sky accounts, and over 10,000 Kick accounts. And when people are able to delve into what I've done over the course of the last 5 or so years, it's going to be a treasure hunt of just amazing content that's really funny. And then also really serious conversations that I've had. I've done my best to not just uh, archive myself in silence, but to interact with people. Moreover, I'm going to be able to do endorsements for different companies in a way that no influencer has been able to do in the past. Basically, wear a brand 24 hours a day. And I, unlike any other influencer, do not generally end my streams, aside from restarting them every 12 hours so that they archive on YouTube. So a brand, if they want brand awareness, I'm the best person with whom they could want to partner, because I'm going to have their brand on camera from multiple streams on multiple angles 24 hours a day. So it has a really great opportunity to make a lot of money. And with that, I'd like to take all that money and put it into a 501c3, basically a not for profit, and be able to give back to the people who have helped me along the way on the stream, have all of that money, that huge pot of money, generate interest, and start giving back and start being able to fund many of these betterment of the world projects that I've discussed.
Yeah. Now, one other thing I wanted to ask, do you also do, and again, I want to get into all that, but just as far as these technical questions, because I'm sure people have, do you also use like meta glasses or like AI glasses and have that as another focal point, like your point of view, as well as all the cameras that are on you?
I'd love to be able to give people a first person view of my life. The best way that I've been able to do that thus far is just a GoPro on my chest to give
Okay.
people a first person view of what I do. And also handheld devices. The Meta glasses, I know they're putting out different versions of them. But for what I need them for, at least the initial versions of the technology, the live streaming capabilities were somewhat limited, and then I have to worry about battery life, and
Yeah.
I already wear glasses, so that makes it, I'll either have to wear two pairs of glasses or get new prescriptions for glasses that may eventually fail on me nevertheless. And so I want to give people in the future a first person view of everything that I do, but I'd like to have multiple versions of the Meta glasses so I can keep one charging at
Mm.
every all the time and just keep them rotating. So that is a plan. But in the meantime, I do have chest mounted cameras that I've used. I have microphones around my neck many times on occasion. And then I've also worn head mounted cameras on my head to give people a first person view. Otherwise, I utilize laptops. I utilize multiple iPhones, multiple Android devices, Chromebooks, and tablets, and those are all going 24 hours a day.
Do you ever get worried about all the signals that are getting beamed at you, like Bluetooth, or all the frequencies that are getting beamed at you constantly, being surrounded with that much technology all the time?
Yeah, so I do my best to have like um, blue light screen protectors,
Mm.
and at night I wear either a some type of like eye block, usually either like a night mask or just I'll pull down like a sleep hat over my eyes to be able to protect myself as much as possible from the blue light. Um, I recognize that I am taking a risk by sleeping around around so many different devices, but usually proximity is a major issue in terms of the devices having an effect on you from their perhaps like EMF radiation, and usually they're at least a couple feet away from me.
Okay.
Um, so I do my best to keep as much of a distance as possible. And I recognize as well that my streams will be studied for this purpose. And people will want to see, how, like in the future, they'll be able to look at one of my streams and be able to see how much radiation is being emitted by each one of these devices, in addition to some really, I feel, amazing things that we don't currently pay attention to in with cameras today too much. Things like gait, how I walk, things like how many blinks per hour I have, or touching of my face or body or something like that. Breaths per hour, heartbeat, my body temperature, the humidity. Micro behaviors, to be able to study the human body from a certain minutia we've never been able to do before. And with the amount of data that I'm collecting from all of these cameras, I feel like there's a trade-off there. And it's certainly a concern of mine. Blue light's always been a concern.
Mm.
EMF radiation has been a concern. But I recognize that it is a sacrifice that I'm having to make. And I'd like people to be able to study this for the future and make the devices safer so that these things are studied, so that you do have some type of way on your phone to know how much EMF radiation is being emitted from whatever device it is. That's something that I feel that we almost have a right to know
Sure.
as as people. When you buy a device and it's emitting radiation, and there's that big thick book that you get when you buy your device, but nobody pays attention to it because they're just so excited to open up their new new smartphone or whatever. We should be able to. Um, we should be able to measure that frequency and give people ways to reduce it in future iterations of the device.
Do you wear any kind of medical tracking stuff, like like Apple Watch has like the health stuff and all that? Are you tracking any of that data as well?
Yeah, in the past, I have tracked. So, like, I have a CPAP machine,
Okay.
and it will track my sleep, and so for those types of that type of metrics, I've been able to track that and how many hours I sleep and my breathing and things like that. In terms of, I don't wear an Apple Watch. Uh, Not that I have any. I have in the past, but not really on this stream. I find that I think that most of that data will be able to be processed in the future wirelessly or via camera, including heartbeats per minute, my temperature, and everything else. Um, I have found that devices like a Apple Watches and such are great, but I run into issues with the battery aspect of it. I want to be able to wear it for, weeks at a time, or like a normal watch, and having to always charge it
Yeah.
at least, once a day or a couple times a day, and then not having use of it is, to me, it's certainly a challenge with the technology. And so I'm an advocate for the major tech companies to know that there are those of us who would love to use this type of technology, including the meta glasses and including Apple Watches and some of the other biometric data sensors. But the technology isn't there yet where we're going to be able to use this. I mean, ideally, I'd love to have an Apple Watch that I could use in the pool while listening to a podcast. If the Apple Watch that I've had was seriously underpowered,
Mm.
I felt, um, and and I don't want to have multiple SIM cards to be able to make telephone calls with it or whatever. And maybe some of the gaps have been closed since I last used a smartwatch, but just generally, I found that I want to be able to check my email very quickly on my Apple phone and go to Spotify and then watch YouTube, all in a waterproof condition. And I think that that's not so outside the box of thinking. I think many people would feel like, hey, if I want to be in the shower and watch a YouTube video on my Apple Watch, I should be able to, and not have to worry about it, it being underpowered. So perhaps in the future iterations, once the biometric sensors on all these devices are better, I'd be much more open to wearing them all the time. But some of the limitations, such as the processing power and such as batteries, have just caused me to not utilize them as much as I feel like I could.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of addressed this when you were talking about your Discord and how big that's become. But I was gonna say, what kind of following has this attracted? Like, your live stream project, whether it's corporate or just like personal. Like, do you have like hardcore people that are just watching hours a day and like following it like you know almost like a drama, I guess, or or from a scientific interest or from a corporate interest? Like, what kind of attention have you been getting from this?
Yes, so I have people who follow it like a drama, who recognize that this could be the biggest event in global history, and they're just waiting for it to pop, waiting for the catalyst to occur. And they're people who, for one reason or another, don't have to work, and they are following along with me all day long, 24 hours a day. I get some people who do work, and they just want to play games with me and sleep at night, and so they'll sleep for like 8 hours in the stream. I get some female, uh, what do I want to say, like admirers, and admirers in general, not just females, but many female admirers, and you know they have to sometimes recognize that I have to be shared, that I am not just theirs, but they build up fantasies, I think, a little bit in their mind over thinking like, wow, I can watch this person whenever I want. I do get some people who watch me long term on YouTube, and I never meet them. They never come to the Discord. They don't want to, but I will learn about them. Um, because they might type to me and they'd be like, I've been watching you for 6 months, or I've been watching you for a year on and off, or whatever it may
Mm.
be. Now, in terms of following, the I want to say that I have an avant-garde strategy of my streaming. So some people may say, Rabbi, I go and I look at you on YouTube. And by the way, if I may say, the best way to find all of my streams is just to type Rabbi Rothschild, who I am, Rabbi Rothschild, in YouTube, and filter by live. If you don't filter by live, you're going to see streams of mine from 2 years ago or 1 year ago. And not that they're not great, but they're 12 hours of perhaps not the most exciting things that I may have been doing. What's more interesting, I think, to you will see what I'm doing live and where you can view my life in 360 degrees, including a ceiling cam. And so you want to make sure that you filter live.
Mm.
Unfortunately, it's a little more difficult to do in a browser on a mobile device, but if you use the app of YouTube, you can find me just by filtering by live, or on a desktop computer filtering by live. I can't emphasize that enough. But some
It,
people may say, Rabbi, you've got like 20 different streams going at any given time from all kinds of angles, but you may only have a couple hundred followers on each of them. And that's by design. Every 6 months to a year, I archive my streams. I don't. I restart all new accounts, and the reason why is because if I ever lose my accounts, which I occasionally do due to copyright strikes, or because YouTube may consider their AI just detects something and doesn't want me to be able to use my YouTube account anymore, I don't want to lose years worth of content. So every 6 months to a year, I take those, hundreds of, or I should say dozens of accounts that I may have with hundreds of followers, or perhaps even some I've had with thousands of followers, and I archive them. And what do I mean by archive them? I just don't live stream to those accounts anymore. I start up all new, brand new accounts. And then if YouTube one day says, hey, we're going to take down 2 of your accounts because you played the FIFA World Cup or something on your streams, okay, it's not that big of a deal, because I do have redundant streams. I multi-stream on other platforms as well, where I have thousands of followers, including places like Rumble and Twitch. I have over 50,000 followers on Twitch, on just one of my Twitch accounts. That's at Bible Rabbi on Twitch. But if you're like, well, I don't see that account streaming that often, that's because I don't want to lose it. I have 50,000 people on there. So if you want to find me on Twitch, just type Rabbi Rothschild in any search of any social media platform, and you'll find me. And I use the hashtag Viral Rabbi. If you use those 2 things, you'll find me. Additionally, platforms like Nemo TV, which is a smaller streaming platform, I have thousands of followers, and I didn't even know I had thousands of followers on it. Like a few years ago, I just plugged in Nemo TV accounts, not really knowing what it was. And over the course of years now, you get a following on there and you didn't even know it. On other social media platforms, I've had tens of thousands of followers on Twitch, or on Twitter. I have more than 10,000 followers on Instagram. I'm at Rabbi Rothschild. On TikTok, I have thousands of followers. So I do have a following. But people will find that because I put out so much data or so much content, it's an overwhelming amount.
sure.
I wouldn't want to be a TikTok follower of mine because I'm putting something out all the time. I'm going to overwhelm your feed in many ways. But for those people who want to find my content, the best place to do it is linktree.com/Rabbi Rothschild. You will find more social media there on an individual than any person you've ever met before. And from there, you can find all the different social media platforms on which I am, probably ones that you've never heard of before. And that's kind of your one-stop shop to find links to my Discord, links to my YouTube, links to press releases that I have, links to my blogs, and all of my social media. And then we have the Discord, which has about 3,000 people in it. And those are real people. I get people from all over the world, depending on the time of day. It basically starts in Australia and then moves to Asia, moves to Africa, Europe, and then North and South America. And then we'll get people in back in Oceania again throughout the day. And like today alone, we had people in Australia, Czech Republic, Slovakia. We have had Nigeria, Canada. And that's not just people popping in. Some people have popped in multiple times, and of course the United States, multiple places in the United States, and that's just what I can recall. And those are people who've talked with me in the live stream on YouTube, not just or on the Discord VC, the video chat, not just people who have joined the Discord. Those are real people who aren't afraid to show their face, and you don't have to show your face, or aren't afraid to have their voice being on my streams. They know. And before anybody joins my Discord, I make them aware that I'm live streaming. I want to make sure that they're aware of what my project is. And then from there, I've had people IRL in real life come and visit me in Irvine, California, from as far away as like 8 hours. They've made road trips just to come meet me and see that I'm the real deal. And certainly if somebody wants to do that, for right now, just come to my Discord. It's easier, and it's basically someplace where you can connect with me whenever you want. So in answer to your question, what kind of following do I have? It's really at this point tens of thousands of people on the different social media, and including thousands of people on Discord, and tens of thousands of people on Twitch, and everything in between from there.
Sure. And I'll have the link, the main link for your link tree on the show notes. So if someone's driving and listening to this right now, you don't got to write it down. It'll be in the link tree will be in the show notes. Just one last kind of like mechanical question here before we get into some of the deeper stuff. But like, how do you keep track and manage all this stuff, man? Like, you have so many accounts going, and at once, and you're archiving things and uploading things and switching accounts and doing this. How do you keep track of all that, man?
A lot of it is stored in my brain, but I have found that, especially when I'm multi-streaming with different accounts under like one streaming source, I will create spreadsheets. And so I know that, like, okay, this computer has these accounts connected to it, and when I go live on this one computer, these are the other accounts where it's going to go live. Spreadsheets are probably the best way to do that. I have password managers to some extent too, but those can get faulty. But yeah, a lot of it is in my brain. I do my best to keep some consistency with what I stream under, though not always, but usually I just use Rabbi Rothschild. And if for one reason, I'll do Rabbi Rothschild 000, Rabbi Rothschild 001, Rabbi Rothschild 002, et cetera, just to know if I need to find myself. But I even have content out there that I've forgotten about over the course of these years. So I certainly haven't been perfect about it. In a perfect world, I wouldn't have to take some of these avant-garde tactics in order to live stream my life, but I've had to take some of the guerrilla tactics to some extent, because many of these platforms don't want you to have 1,000 accounts or 10,000 accounts or whatever it is that I have. And I recognize that, but the desire that I have truthfully in my heart and soul for this project make me realize that I might have to bend some of the policies. And I also know some of the policies have certain exceptions. So, for instance, I a lot of times get a copyright strike for whatever reason. A song plays on the radio and YouTube hears it, and I get a copyright strike. And I didn't play that song. That wasn't something with which I had intention, but you can only get so many of those within a 90-day period. Usually it's 3 before you lose your account completely. And if that does happen, it's not the end of the world. And I also know that YouTube has much of this information saved on servers. Even if you don't have access to the account, the data is still saved. And there is an exception um, known as newsworthiness to many of their policies that basically say, hey, if an event becomes newsworthy enough, we can unban you because of that. And I feel my project is a newsworthy event. It's the most newsworthy event of any project ever, perhaps. And because of that, I don't worry too much if one of my accounts gets, I don't have access to it anymore for whatever reason, because I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel with the terms and conditions for newsworthiness. And believe it or not, I just randomly sometimes get an email that says YouTube reviewed some account that I had from 2 years ago and gives it back to me just randomly. Who knows whether it's AI or it's a manual human reversal of that decision? I have no idea, but I know that the data is being stored somewhere. So that's what's important to me. And with every stream that people see of mine, I have a redundant stream saved on multiple other platforms. So if I did lose access to a YouTube account, everything's backed up on Rumble. And I've created other bots on Instagram and TikTok that upload my life as well, and additionally on Twitter. So I have redundant streams of just about everything. And that's why I can say, unlike any live streamer, there are people out there who say, oh, I know someone who live streams their life, and that's great. Anybody can live stream. Archiving the data is the challenge. Can you go back and watch what that person was doing one month ago, 1 year ago, 4 years ago? Generally, the answer is no. But with mine, you can. And that's what makes it perhaps the biggest event in global history as a time capsule, because I'm not just streaming and that data goes away. It is archived. I have found some other people who are archiving their life. We're calling it, it really doesn't have a great name, but some people call it life logging. Other people call it life streaming. But they, to my knowledge, and I've met them. They've been in my Discord, and we see each other as allies. But they've done it like maybe 350 days, and I just surpassed 1,700 days. Yeah. So I've been doing it for a lot longer. But I do like that this is a growing trend, and I encourage other people to do it if they can. Fortunately, with my positions in the past, especially in the app world, I've been able to find some financial independence. And for anyone else out there who can maintain their quality of life and live stream their life simultaneously, if you can do that, I encourage you to do it, not just from the benefit that it's going to give you and the community that you're going to build, but for the future society, future people of society. They're going to want to learn from this data, just like they're going to learn from my data. So the more people we can have do this, I feel the better.
Sure. Now, getting into some of the other aspects of things that you want to talk about, like your futurist inclinations and your studies into different various topics. The first question I would just have, given your background as a rabbi, then also your interest in things like time travel or like UFO and UFO disclosure, like how does all of that work, like with your religious belief system, and then also with those other beliefs, like do you kind of incorporate that all into one worldview, or is it like are they exclusive? Like do you understand what I'm asking with that? Like you don't meet a lot of people from a religious background, whatever the religious background is, and then that are also into like discussing and researching like time travel or like UFO disclosure and things like that.
Most certainly. It is unique. I do my best to maintain as orthodox a life as I can, including davening every single day, davening chakras, morning prayers, wearing my tefillin with the little boxes that you may and your audience may be familiar with what Orthodox Jews wear on a daily basis. And I say blessings on food. I light Shabbat candles every week. I say Havdalah at the end of each Shabbat. We celebrate all the Jewish holidays throughout the year. And I also teach a 1-hour Kabbalah class every single day, and have for 167 straight days. And that was kind of an undertaking that I have recently started. And so with that, I have 167 hours of my life, more than that though, because sometimes they're more than an hour. But basically, having either I'm discussing Kabbalah or we're learning some type of Jewish mysticism. And while this isn't the traditional life of a rabbi, I recognize that it is a sacrifice that I'm making, but somebody's got to make the sacrifice. And I have a very inclusive community. While I'm an Orthodox rabbi who has in the past been very Hasidic. I very much have modern Orthodox tendencies. And I recognize that we're moving in a world, even within the Jewish community, of postmodern Orthodoxy, where certain questions are being raised in terms of things like lab grown meat or the electric car or smart homes. And our lives are really being changed by technology. And I embrace many of these discussions and have them publicly with the world. In terms of my life as a rabbi, I would like to continue to. I see my camera went off. Oh, okay, there we go. I would like to continue to live stream my life for the remainder of my life, but I'd also like to build a shul, a synagogue someday, where people can meet in person. My synagogue now is essentially just my community, aside from the synagogues of which I'm a member IRL in real life. But I'd like to have a brick and mortar location for people to be able to, at least for Jews, to be able to congregate. But also, there are paths to Orthodox conversion as well. And I want people to be able to be welcome to Judaism if they find that's of interest to them. And I want them to have a guide through that process as well. And so, in my own way, I'm a leader within the community and either making Jews more Jewish or people who may not even want to be Jewish, but may be interested in being a Noahide, which is basically someone who follows the 7 laws of Noah quickly. They are don't kill, don't steal, don't blaspheme, don't worship idols, don't drink the blood of a living animal, don't have like sexual impropriety, and to create a system of laws. So even if you don't want to take on the 613 mitzvot or commandments of Judaism and you feel that's not for you, I feel like everyone can basically unite under those 7 Noahide laws. And many people don't know about them. And generally, I am about humans. I'm about self-improvement and meditation and just creating a better species for our society. So from those aspects, I am most likely very progressive. But in many of my traditional Jewish leanings, they are quite orthodox or modern Orthodox, and I connect very deeply with Hasidic dynasties and with Hasidic teachings. So I do my best to incorporate traditional Jewish teachings and thought into the modern age. And this wouldn't be the first time that a rabbi has had advancements like this. Of course, there had to be the first rabbi to use electricity, and the first rabbi to use a phone, and the first rabbi to use a computer. So we do make strides, and I'm just doing the same from a live streaming standpoint. And I don't work on Shabbat. I don't drive on Shabbat. I do my best to live as orthodox a lifestyle as I can within the modern age. And then with my futuristic leanings, we're moving in a world from a world of Homo sapien to transhumanism. And if you don't mind, I'll just at least preface the discussion on futurism to talk about.
It's great because that was going to be my next question. As someone
Sure.
that's a futurist, or is someone involved in the study of the future, but also someone who's a rabbi. What is your take on things like transhumanism, and like, how do you reconcile like, those two worlds, like, because there's a traditional and then, a futuristic perspective.
Yes, I feel that they can be melded in a peaceful and coherent vision. So, generally, for all of human existence, life has always had an end, and that has been death. But with the advent of different life extension technologies like oxygen therapy and human growth hormones, stem cells and cryonics and cryogenics and nootropics and peptides and cold shock therapy and red light therapy and testosterone replacement therapy and all of these other advancements within society, we are able to extend life now perhaps longer than age 80 to age 100, 120 perhaps. And even that is an artificial inflation, basically, of what once was natural life. And we're moving also into a world where the first human has actually begun taking uh, anti or pardon me, reverse aging pharmaceuticals. Basically, types of pharmaceuticals that will either slow their cell degradation or reverse cell degradation in the human body. And that may allow humans to be able to live even, up to 120 or older. And then there's a type of technology that I feel is absolutely fascinating, which is known as mind uploading technology. And before any of the audience hears this and says, I don't want this, that's fine. If you don't want it, I don't want you to have it. All of this is with consent, and consent is very important in this. For those people who just want to be Homo sapiens, by all means, I understand. I'm a Homo sapien. Well, you're a Homo sapien. We all are Homo sapiens. No one is able, under current technology, at least in a declassified way, to be able to escape death. And so if you don't want this type of technology, you don't have to have it. But for those of us who at least want to perhaps explore the idea of being able to delay death indefinitely, I feel that we should have the right. And that's really a transhumanist view. So the idea of mind uploading technology may be the ability, with someone's consent, to be able to scan their brain into a computer like a CAT scanner, an MRI, knowing where every atom is in their central nervous system and their peripheral nervous system for later download as an android, an avatar, a cyborg, a cybernetic being, a clone of themselves, a robot, an ethereal being, whatever they want to be. But essentially, what I'm saying to you and to your audience is that we may be of a generation that may have the opportunity at some type of digital immortality. And that's of extreme excitement to those of us who may not necessarily fear death, but would like to delay it as long as possible as an innate human instinct. And for those who this may scare, you should know that if you don't want it, you shouldn't have it. But for those of us who may want to extend our lives or perhaps be some type of other being in the future, that is something that I don't feel should be limited as well. And in terms of a religious aspect of this, um, the sages, especially within Judaism, but within all religions, recognize that technology will make advancements, and there will be some types of adaptations that may need to be made. And generally, at least within Judaism, different types of therapies that extend life are generally endorsed. Life is valuable, and so if we can extend it even from an artificial way with things like pacemakers or artificial limbs, to be able to extend the quality of life of an individual, we generally do so, at least within Judaism. And things like the different technologies that I named, oxygen therapy, human growth hormone, stem cells, are really no different than in this. And then eventually we'll get to a point where people may want to utilize types of technology like reverse aging or mind uploading to extend human life indefinitely, and even change the kind of being that they are. And if this is an opportunity, these are realms where humans and will have to make determinations. But at this point, there's nothing necessarily anti-religious about this, at least from a Jewish perspective. There's nothing anti-Jewish about this. These are advancements that the sages, the poskim, our traditional rabbinical bodies have anticipated would occur. And actually, it is at the heart of Orthodox Judaism. We believe in a messianic figure. We call that person Mashiach. And one of the traits of Mashiach is that, in addition to rebuilding the Beit HaMikdash, the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, and uniting the nations from around the world, is they are supposed to resurrect the dead. And this is a type of technology that's known as revivification, where basically you bring back someone who was once dead back to life. So there are some technical aspects or technology-driven similarities between the doctrine of Orthodox Judaism and our technological and many of our technological advancements. And so I think that many of these what may be seen as contradictory worlds are in fact perhaps able to be meshed and adapted for the modern age.
And what is your view, either from personal or from religious standpoint, about the technologies like Elon Musk, like brain implants that might combine, human consciousness with AI or an ability to access things, with a technological implant that's not really meant for like life extension, but more about just having more brain power, for lack of a better term.
Yes, if it enhances human life and makes a human being happier, then generally it is not something that would be a direct contradiction of Jewish doctrine, um, of what we call halakha, Jewish law, so long as it doesn't necessarily, it's not controlled by someone else. Somebody does it of their own free will. So long as it doesn't endanger the person's health, that all of the, for lack of a better term, kinks have been worked out, and it would be seen as an enhancement of human life, then it absolutely would generally be accepted, just like a pacemaker has been accepted. But even prior to that, glasses had to be accepted at a certain point for as an artificial utilization of technology to be able to benefit a human. And just that project, the Neuralink project of Elon Musk, has I've been able to archive some really great advancements of that. The first Neuralink transplant, his name is Nolan Aspro, something along those lines. My pronunciation of his name may be slightly off, but he is a quadriplegic man who lost the ability to use his to have use of his arms and legs due to diving into a pond, and basically found himself at a point where he did not feel that he had the same quality of life that he had before his injury, and volunteered to be a test subject for what's called a BCI, a brain computer interface, what we know as Neuralink. And his Neuralink successfully was implanted in his skull in 2023. And now he can play video games better than you or I can combined. And he is able to move a cursor using his mind better than you or I could, perhaps with our hand-eye coordination. And while I am definitely an advocate for these types of advancements, and since then, about half a dozen people have had these implants. I personally don't want one. I would rather be able to wear a cap, and this is an advancement as well, something that doesn't necessarily go into my body.
Sure.
As I've talked about before, things like battery issues and water issues and just damage to the device. I have a fear of that. I don't want to necessarily say a fear, but I'm cautious about it. But if I could wear a swim cap that basically allowed me to have all kinds of knowledge, and I could speak all of the world's languages and have all of the world's encyclopedias at the just the idea of a thought, I would be more open to this. And companies like Snap Inc., the people behind Snapchat, have purchased some companies that have a wearable cap that basically reads brain waves to be able to move cursors on screens and such. And we're just at the very uh, precipice. This type of technology is in its infancy, but given the course of a few decades, I imagine that there will be maybe a huge contingent of humanity that requests having some type of Neuralink or some type of brain computer interface once many of the challenges are have their troubleshooting completed, and the quality assurance on them um, at a is at a point where people have um, confidence in the technology. But there are those of us who don't want any implants. And if that's your audience, I'm with you.
Yeah.
So you can keep your implants. If anything, I'll wear something if I want, but I want to be able to just take it off if I ever don't like it.
Yeah.
And so so for those of us who may not be in the position, thankfully, that we are quadriplegics or quadriplegic individuals, or um, don't feel that our quality of life is already good enough that we don't need a brain computer interface, we should have the ability to utilize this type of technology from a voluntary standpoint, as Nolan Asbro did, but recognize that he can now play video games better than anyone. One quote, or on a topic that he said at one point, uh, in the future, from a video game standpoint, video games will have two different divisions. There will be people with brain computer interfaces and people without them. And this is very similar in some ways to like modern Olympic types of games, where you have like the enhanced games and then you have like the unenhanced games, like the more natural, or so to speak, natural versions of this. And especially knowing that Nolan and the other people who have participated in the Neuralink program are making such strides, and that this program is expanding, I imagine within a decade or two, people will voluntarily, without having any type of disability or any kind of special need or special ability of any kind, voluntarily accept a brain computer interface. And whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, this is a choice that I feel should be allowed to individuals who wish to make it.
I agree with you. Like I would be interested in a wearable one that you can shut off if you just want to shut it off, or like not. The thing I get worried about with these is, the things you mentioned, like, the potential for malfunction or battery life or things like that, but also just the potential for someone being able to hack in or observe or surveil, or loss of privacy from that. Because, we see the way things are going, even with cars in 2027, they're all going to have kill switches that are just reading your face. And if it looks like you're sleepy, they're just going to shut off. What happens when they just decide to shut your brain implant off? From a standpoint of someone who doesn't need one for medical reasons, like, I know if I was a paraplegic and it could make me be able to move limbs again, I'd be all in probably all the time. But from just a enhancement purpose, like to be able to have more access to knowledge or quicker, reflexes or whatever, I agree with you. Like, I'd be interested in trying something that's wearable, but I wouldn't want something that's permanent in there. Because
I agree. I was on a podcast with a woman within the last month, and she had some hearing issues. And she said when she had analog hearing aids, she never had any issues. But the newer versions that she has, she basically can. She feels like she is getting like transmissions, and they have like Bluetooth on them and such. So perhaps there's some kind of signal interference, but there are transmissions that she doesn't want, basically. And because she has to wear them because in order to hear, it is a side effect she doesn't like, and she wishes she could go back to the analog ones, but they don't make those ones anymore. So she's in a quandary in terms of the brain-computer interface and Neuralink, the idea, at least in Nolan's case, is where there is a break in his spine, to basically at one end of the break to use Bluetooth or some other kind of communicative technology and bridge the gap where the break is with the upper part of his spine and the lower part of his spine, and basically allow him to send a communication signal to the Bluetooth to be able to bridge that spine with brain waves, and maybe perhaps be able to use the lower part of his body again someday. And with these types of advancements, I find that to be of extreme excitement. Other things that I'd like to see, perhaps brain computer interfaces or something be able to bridge these gaps, are things like blindness, of course, deafness, perhaps mute, and people who have all kinds of perhaps neurological or physical issues. But again, we're in agreement. If you don't need it, I don't want to be I don't want to be experimented on with it. And it's kind of for me like AI. I always want to be able to unplug my AI, whatever it is. Like if it starts to self-replicate or cause any kind of damage, I want to be able to stop it. In the same way with a brain-computer interface or brain-computer or perhaps some type of skull cap or neurological brain wave cap. If I don't like it, I want to be able to take it off. I want that control. And your audience, I'm sure, probably agrees with that.
Yeah. And, thinking along lines for this type of technology, it's a little different, but could have some potential similar uses. Have you done much exploration or research into like nanobots and the potential of, that type of microtechnology being able to, work inside the human body in different capacities, whether it's restorative or other, enhancements?
Yeah, from good and bad. So there's a hypothetical scenario known as gray goo, where self-replicating nanobots take over the world. And while this may seem like science fiction, it's definitely something that could happen. So definitely there are negative aspects of nanobots, but there are so many positive aspects of nanobots as well, to be able to, for their restorative functions, to be able to rebuild at the nano level or the pico level, even smaller, and even lower than that, perhaps, from an electron microscope perspective, in ways that a surgeon could never do, and perhaps traditional pharmaceuticals could not target the area as well as some of these types of technologies from at a nanobot scale. So I think from that perspective, there's an extreme opportunity there. But just like with any kind of technology, we have to be very careful with it, because very easily you could get that gray goose scenario where a hypothetical situation where nanobots self-replicate and take over, and we want to avoid that, of course. So just like with any technology, whether it's AI or even going back to fire or the wheel or steam or electricity or radio, with any type of technology, it's a tool, and it depends on whose hands it's in and how it's going to be used. The tool itself is generally neutral. It's people's intent with how they use it where issues can occur.
And one other question just on like futurist stuff, and then we can get into the UFO stuff. But what is your take on because we've been talking a lot about AI, and I'd be interested from your perspective, because you have a religious perspective as well. If AI, do you believe AI will reach general intelligence or sentience? And if it does, what are the ramifications of that, whether it's like socially, culturally, or in the world, or even like, from a spiritual aspect? Because this is now, it would be a new sentient being.
Yes. Oh, most certainly we'll have artificial general intelligence in the future. And some people say it's already here. To give people an idea of the different levels generally of artificial intelligence, there's artificial narrow intelligence, which is the primitive type of chatbots that you may have been frustrated with in the past on a customer service website, or just your basic type of artificial intelligence that may be utilized by your computer. Then there's artificial general intelligence, which is what we're referencing, which is intelligence at the human comprehension level. And some people say that ChatGPT has exceeded that at this point. It's able to pass the bar or complete the bar exam at a passing rate, or the MCATs, or um, the SATs, get perfect scores, or whatever it may be, ACTs, you name it. If it's a test, ChatGPT at this point can get a perfect score very quickly. And then there's another level of this, which is ASI, which is artificial superintelligence, which is above the level of human intelligence, which by definition is in many ways things that we can't even comprehend, or at least at speeds that we can't even comprehend. And what happens when we have a bot that has what we would consider to be feelings, what we would consider to be emotion, and that maybe can experience some type of pain or sadness and happiness and all of the other aspects of a human? Do we consider these to be uh, human? And probably not. We probably would still consider them to be artificial, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't treat them with care and respect, because just like anything that we're uh, utilizing on Earth, it's important to ensure that we are using, whether it's technology or animals, with a certain level of respect. And I would say that if we were looking at an intelligence chart, so to speak, um, at the bottom we may have like bacterium, moving up to your different maybe fungi, and then plant life, and um, then moving into more what we would consider to be things in the animal kingdom, perhaps, and then moving into primates, and then chimpanzees and orangutans, and other primates, and then eventually humans. And then what we are with this transhumanism discussion is we are really advancing into a new type of species, a species that doesn't die, which I think most people would say a species that doesn't die is different than Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens die. I mean, it's every Homo sapien that's ever been alive has died, or is currently living at this moment. But there hasn't been a Homo sapien that's been able to escape death and from a recorded fashion. And in Darwin's evolution of man, we basically are moving to another model of that. And I've heard transhumanists say that this should be called some just terms that are used are techno homo, is one of them, and some other versions of it. But we are moving into something different now. In terms of where does AI move into that intelligence level? Well, because of the advancement and the speed at which AI can process its own being. Is that a living being? It depends how you define life. And especially when you get into cybernetic beings and cyborgs, you can introduce that type of technology into what we would perhaps see as a living being, and there can be a merger there. And so the lines aren't as clearly cut as perhaps they once were, from a zoological or biological standpoint. But at least from a religious standpoint, at the current time, people do not see AI as a human. It doesn't count. You can't, it doesn't, so to speak, in the things that we use, that we use to count humans. We don't or at least include humans. We don't include AI in that. And really at this point it's considered a tool. And until we have some further merger within cybernetics and cyborgs, I think AI will remain a tool, but eventually we will have that merger. And so it is not out of the realm of possibility that perhaps someday people may consider AI, especially if it's merged with some type of into some type of cybernetic being. It might be considered intelligent life.
And for, just as someone that studies a broad range of topics, in the next decade or two, what do you think will be some of the most significant advances that you can see coming down the pipeline? And also, is there anything that you see that you are like, fear, like oh, I hope this one doesn't happen.
Yes. So 6G technology, I think, will have some major impact on connectivity. We didn't see that much change between 4G and 4G LTE and 5G, or at least haven't yet. But I feel like that 5G technology still has an opportunity to expand. But then 6G, and then eventually 7G, 8G, 9G, 10G, etc., are going to have much more impacts on not just our wireless connectivity, but their impact in perhaps being able to manipulate aspects of society as well. Um, I think that we'll also find battery lives to be increased. Um, there are a lot of people, and I think I'm not alone, who feel like the lithium battery is, we're maxing it out. And unless we can either improve battery life or develop other kinds of batteries, we are going to plateau. And there are other kinds of batteries that work very well, one of which is known as an americium battery. Americium is one of those elements on the low end of the periodic table that you may have in your house already. If you have a smoke alarm that doesn't need its battery changed for like 7 years, that's an americium battery, most likely. And those batteries can last hundreds of years um, under the right environments. And additionally, there are kinetic batteries, basically batteries that get their energy from movement. Of course, there are solar batteries and advancements in solar that may take place. And all of these things may be able to allow for better communication and just overall user experience. I feel we're going to move from your traditional smartphone design to flip phone designs that basically fold. But and this has already been proposed. These are already available to some extent, but we haven't seen mainstream acceptance with them. But then from the fold, I think we will eventually get something that is like an Apple Watch, but it projects on your hand. So your hand actually, like, you'd have something on your wrist, your Apple Watch, but then it would project on your hand, and you could actually use your hand as the phone screen, and then moving eventually toward holographic phones, where there'd be a projection in midair, and you could use your phone. I think we'll see some major developments in terms of smartphones as well. Really, the iPhone hasn't changed all that much in reality since iPhone 1. And I want to see more sensors on the iPhone. I want to know what the temperature of my iPhone is. I want to know, for 30 years of cell phone and wireless connectivity, it's been the same standard: 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars, or 4 bars. That's it. Or within Wi-Fi or within your cell phone signal. Why don't I have a percentage? Why don't I have a connection percentage of how good my signal is, instead of 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars, or 4 bars? Connectivity, I feel, will be a lot better in terms of full autopilot of vehicles and autonomous vehicles. We're going to see major strides there. We're going to see areas of the world that it is illegal to drive a traditional car. I think probably one of the first places this may be is Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona is the leader in autonomous driving environments, especially just because of the environment there. It's dry, there's no snow, very little rain. And there are some other cities that may emerge as leaders in this. Within China, there are already cities. One is called Beijing E-City, or Beijing E-Town, where basically the entire city is autonomous. And it is the example that is used to be able to expand this type of technology into other areas of China. Additionally, I think that we may, within the next 10 or 20 years, perhaps start to see maglev trains being used. Perhaps at our California corridor may be utilized. I think that we will see, moreover, completely autonomous businesses, or at least factories, completely run by robots. Robots and AI, I would say, are industries that will be most advanced within the next 10 or 20 years, where many people's positions are replaced. Uh, Factory workers and blue collar workers replaced by robots, white collar workers replaced by AI entities to some extent, which is good and bad for people. It will give people more opportunity to do what they love, but they won't have any way to support themselves. So I see a universal basic income (UBI) as something that will advance in the coming future, and faster than people may be able to anticipate. Dangerous jobs like mining or working in dangerous environments or conditions will be replaced by robots. Also, drones will become much more a part of human commonplace. Additionally, a type of technology that we really don't see right now that I have a lot of that I could anticipate will be um, possibly more common in the future are pneumatic tubes. So these are the kind of tubes that you see at the bank that basically suck up and that type of transportation system has been around since at least the 1960s. It was developed even earlier than that, but it's been commonplace in some industries since the 1960s. And being able to transport items long distances very quickly using pneumatic tubes is an opportunity that really hasn't been utilized that much. Usually we use traditional ways of routing things using like trucks or delivery systems or planes or whatever it may be, but pneumatic tubes may have a really an excellent possibility of being able to transform society. Additionally, I think projectors will become very big for society as well. Um, so just being able to no longer be forced to see something on a screen, but perhaps have a projector that automatically comes out of your telephone. We have projectors now that fit in people's pockets, and they're just going to get smaller than that. Um, those are some of the major developments that I anticipate within the next 10 or 20 years in terms of technology. But of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg and things that may actually come to fruition.
Sure. Um, and we're going on an hour and a half here, so in interest of time, I could talk about this stuff with you all day. But one thing that when you reached out that you mentioned you want to talk about that I'm all in on is the whole thing with UFOs and disclosure and things like that. So first, I guess just give me a general background on what your take on what the UFO or alien phenomena is. Really is. Do you feel like these are extraterrestrial beings? Do you feel like these are, interdimensional beings, things like the Nephilim, or from a religious standpoint, or do you think all the above, or this could be a massive like Project Bluebeam psyop? Like, what's your general take on things here?
Well, I think that humans perhaps could have been seeded here. This
Yeah.
is a type of uh, theory that's known as panspermia or guided panspermia if we were brought here by um, another civilization. Panspermia would generally be life was maybe added to Earth through an asteroid or something along those lines. But I think it's much higher. It's a much higher possibility that we had guided panspermia. In terms of the Nephilim, I think that this is a term. Traditionally, these were referenced as giants or even the offsprings of the sons of Hashem or sons of God or and the daughters of men. And with it throughout ancient texts, they were associated with legendary strength and violence and much of the world's corruption. Really, the biblical texts are pretty brief and ambiguous, so their exact nature is up for significant debate. I do think, though, that the people of the past, especially from um, our ancient texts, had their eyes to the sky, certainly on constellations and the different movements that would occur within the celestial realm. And so perhaps the Nephilim that were referenced were some type of extraterrestrial race. But generally, I think that we were perhaps part of something known as guided panspermia. Specifically, I get my information from alien abductees because these are people who whether they are whether they can be verified, their accounts can be verified. Much of their predictions or their accounts have come true. Not all of them, but many of them. So, for instance, Betty and Barney Hill. It's a classic. It's a classic alien abduction case from the early 1960s. Basically, the basic breakdown is a couple is driving from Canada back to the United States through New Hampshire. Something that's interesting about the couple is they were an interracial couple when that was not the norm at that time. In fact, they were the first, one of the first predominant or well-known interracial couples that had been published in Western literature. Not the first, but one of the more predominant ones. And they were driving in their vehicle when Betty, who was in the passenger seat, saw a light in the sky and it seemed to be following them. There, they eventually slowed their car down and approached what they saw as a craft in a field, and they had some missing time from there. They made it back to their home, but recognized that time had been missing and that they should have gotten home much earlier than they did. And it was under hypnosis that they were able to recount some really interesting aspects that these beings said that they came from a place called Zeta Reticuli, which is 39 light years from Earth. It is a dual star system, so they have two stars instead of one, and their stars are slightly smaller than Earth's, and that they were from a planet that revolved around these stars, and they stated to humans basically that we may have been in other alien accounts or alien abductee accounts that we may have been seated here and that Earth is like a zoo and that experiments are being conducted every single day on people somehow, some way. And stealth technology or cloaking may be used for this. Stealth may be used for this. Memory erasure could be used for this. To be able to manipulate or at least make the effects of these different species difficult or at least cloudy to be able to ascertain. One of the interesting points from the Betty and Barney Hill case is Betty made a star map in the 1960s to basically show where Zeta Reticuli was in the solar system or in the universe. And while it was a pretty rudimentary map, the Zeta Reticuli system had not yet been discovered, or perhaps it was discovered, but it was not publicly known that it had a dual star system and such. And so there was some accuracy to these takes. And if you study the cases of many of the other many of the other alien abductees, they say that Earth is basically like a zoo that has been seeded here, just like we have zoos where we take different creatures and have them give birth there, and we have hybrid programs that occur. And then there are different theories, and I should have prefaced this by saying I don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows, but these are just, I can give you what I've studied and what the mainstream beliefs are, at least within ufology, which one of the things I'd like to do is to make the study of ufology a real, not that it's not a real topic for learning and for studying, but to give it more credibility. This is not fringe. This is mainstream. In 2017, the New York Times published the fact that the Tic Tac off the coast of San Diego, the USS Nimitz, basically a craft that was traveling at thousands of miles on a FLIR camera that couldn't be explained. This is the New York Times is the newspaper of is the most respected newspaper over the course of the last century, and they have it on the front page. We've had David Grush, who was a military um, uh, who was a military um, whistleblower who talked about the what he had encountered within some clandestine organizations within the U.S. government. Even within the last month, we've seen the Trump administration that has released some videos and other documents that really people don't necessarily know exactly what they are. But if anything, if the military is willing to have whistleblowers who talk about these things, and even the government is able to talk about these things, that there may be something there. As the phrase is, there may be a there. And so, for anyone out there who thinks that this is not mainstream, it most certainly is. When the New York Times is publishing about it, and military whistleblowers are discussing it, and the Defense Department has had released its documents on it, there are some major questions in regards to what's going on. So, I personally think that there is that we were seated here, that it has been a UFO cover up, especially since Roswell in 1947, because it's multifaceted why this occurs. One, it would totally revolutionize society in terms of religion and just the ebb and flow of how our society works. It would make us realize that the people in power aren't necessarily really in power. It would change energy. No longer would we be reliant on fossil fuels when we have nuclear energy and perhaps other types of advanced science like anti-gravity and antimatter. Even from a defense perspective, if you can manipulate gravity, you can create force fields. You can manipulate space-time at certain points. You can travel you can warp space-time to be able to create wormholes and travel faster than the speed of light at a certain point. With these types of developments, it would cause major issues in terms of the status quo of the of the diplomacy of Earth. Moreover, there are religious connotations to this that religions don't really address these topics. All of the major religions are generally pretty earthbound, and so those who are at the heads of religious organizations may not want this type of information to become mainstream. And just overall, there's a lot of power by not allowing people to have this mass disclosure. So I think instead of having what's known as hard disclosure with aliens landing on the White House lawn, or as everybody has generally wanted or expected or something, we've had something called soft disclosure, which is a period of decades where we've had predictive programming of alien technology and alien species that have been leaked out in our media and certainly in film and music and television to make it so that people aren't all of a sudden scared and that they are more comfortable with the idea. And it's conversations like we're having that are going to give people more comfort and understanding that we are not alone, that that's okay, that that's actually quite a mature take to have. And we need to recognize as a species that we are on the verge of becoming a more advanced species, but we're not even a type 1 species on the Kardashev scale, let alone a type 2 or type 3. And for those who don't know what the Kardashev scale is, uh, Kardashev was a Soviet uh, scientist who basically created a scale and like a type 1 civilization. For us to be there, we would have to utilize essentially all the energy that the Earth produces, and we're not able to do that. And then type 2 would be like perhaps everything from our star, and type 3 perhaps everything from our galaxy, something along those lines. So we are still infants in terms of the of where we stand. But then there have been whistleblowers as well. One is Chaim Eshed of the Israeli space organization, who, after the ability and in his retirement years, has said that there is a known program at least with with the United States government and some type of extraterrestrial civilizations, where, and this has been theorized as well, in exchange for people being able to be abducted, there's been an exchange for technology, and also there is uh, 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 a theory as well that much of the technology that was gleaned from the Roswell crash was reverse engineered, basically given to major corporations like Bell Lab and IBM and such to be able to create the transistor, to be able to create stealth technology, night vision technology, perhaps Scotch Guard, and other technologies like perhaps some types of microwave technology, advanced communications, perhaps cloaking. And instead of us giving the credit to being reverse engineered technologies, it's usually given to research teams at a certain company, and then they get credit for it when in reality, they may not have come up with it at all. These are just theories.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to verify them because the second that you have any kind of evidence, you're going to have knocks at your door from some type of clandestine group that is going to take all of your papers and your effects, and they're going to classify them. So, in a very long summary of what I think is going on, I think aliens have been here perhaps since our start. Perhaps they seeded us here. They're here every day. This isn't something that just happened since the Roswell crash in 1947. The alien abductee phenomenon is real, and we have to be mature and face the fact that we are not even a type 1 civilization yet, and we're only moving toward that, and we have to be okay with that.
Sure. And, there's a lot there. And, I tend to agree with you that we don't know the real answer. We don't know what it's out there. We can speculate. And there's a lot of evidence for that there is something, but what it is, like I've had a bunch of people on the podcast that believe like some people think it's us from the future coming back in time, or it's, all kinds of things. And I mean, you don't, even if you are an experiencer, you don't really know, and that it's all interesting to me, like whether it's, extraterrestrial from another planet or, whatever, or time travelers or whatever, it's, there's something going on. And the fact that even now, if you go to departmentofwar.gov/UAP or UFO, there's tons and tons, and they just released another batch of, unclassified files, videos, and images, and unclassified documents and things like that. It's just with this disclosure, it's wild that it's trickling out. But I don't, and I'm not trying to be of the paranoid mindset, but I'm always I question everything. I'm like, why now? Why is it so, it's the slow drip, like you were saying. Maybe it's just to desensitize people, to get people accustomed to it slowly, or is it just another psyop? But it's all very interesting to me. But I do believe something's there. I just don't. I would lie. Anyone that says they absolutely know, unless they're in the know on one of these programs, it doesn't really know what's going on. Because I think even in the government, everyone doesn't know, because I feel like, and as you kind of alluded to, that a lot of this technology and a lot of these programs are black programs that are hidden within different corporations, so that there doesn't have to be any disclosure on the government part, or there can be compartmentalization, so people don't really know what's going on. And Lockheed Martin isn't subject to the same disclosure necessities to the population as the U.S. government would be. So they can put stuff in those in those corporations, so that they don't have to really tell us what's going on. But, what I'd like to ask you about is just from a religious standpoint, and from, being a rabbi and being ingrained in religion. I know we've heard things, even recently, like that pastors were being kind of brought in under a program and being taught about disclosure, and being taught about how to, tell their their people in the how to how to bring this stuff up with people. And, we've always heard that the Vatican has a, stance and does research into the UFO area. But, from your standpoint and coming from Judaism, like how do these two worlds like integrate, from a Judaic standpoint?
Certainly. I've brought this topic to my rabbinical colleagues, specifically modern Orthodox people in the diaspora, or Hasidic rabbis from Israel, and I've directly shown them on occasion video of like a MiG that has a Soviet MiG plane that has a UFO flying parallel to it, and obviously able to travel with much more freedom than your traditional aircraft can. And the best answer that I've gotten is the more traditional answer that there's only God, there's only Hashem. And that's fine. And I understand that there's a certain line to be towed, because a certain rabbi has colleagues as well that don't want to catch their communities off guard by any means. From a briefing standpoint, I think that especially within Judaism, we have some liberal-minded ideas, especially in terms of some aspects of science. And there's a certain maturity that I know a lot of people, not just within my community, but within the larger Jewish community globally, recognizes that we may not be alone, and that much of the technology that we are currently using may be reverse engineered, and that's okay. Is there a contingency plan within Judaism, basically break glass in case of disclosure, where we all toe the line to a certain strategy? Not necessarily. Judaism, in one of its advantages, is that we don't have a single head. There isn't a single patriarch that speaks on behalf of all of Judaism. So many Jews are members of Hasidic dynasties like Chabad or Breslov, or really quite a few, including Chernobyl and Satmar, and they look to their rebbes as the leader. But even those rebbes don't have necessarily the answer, and I think will be ready to adjust just like any other person would be. In terms of more modern or liberal-minded progressive Jews who are still Orthodox, we recognize that we may not be alone, and we have to be okay with that, and that our leaders are open to the discussion. I know, for instance, one of the great sages of previous decades, rabbi known as the Rebbe, the Chabad Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, known as Menachem Mendel Schneerson, of blessed memory, was not against necessarily the idea of extraterrestrial life, and that this may be a possibility, and that this type of disclosure one day perhaps does not necessarily discount anything that we have in Torah, and does not discount our traditions, that it would be something that is a possibility, and did not turn a blind eye to this type of an event. And so there have been some discussions of the rabbis of history on and in their writings on what happens if we aren't alone. And in general, I think that Judaism will adapt to this type of knowledge as the world will. Judaism is a very adaptable religion, and we've had to adapt over the course of our more than 5,000 and nearly 6,000 years of what we trace our history. And at this point, we have been a nation for about 3,000 years, but our history is 5,784 years or so, and we are we look to continue for another 5,000 and so on years into the future. And I think that most Jews at behind closed doors want to embrace the idea of alien disclosure and where we may be. So from that type of perspective, the leadership sometimes will just default to there's only God and that's it. But if you are really able to corner them, they recognize that even their rabbis have had some more progressive stances on this. And then in terms of the other religions, um, they've changed their stances on things as well in terms of what may be possible with extraterrestrial life. So I think all major religions will adapt to the news if it ever is fully disclosed to some extent, perhaps at a community level, or perhaps it'll be a global level, like you had mentioned earlier, Project Bluebeam, where, as I understand, this is a theory that one day, perhaps in the not too distant future, there will be an event, maybe with motherships over the major cities of the world, very similar way to like a movie like Independence Day, where perhaps there's a messianic figure that's brought into the fold. Perhaps the people of the world are forced into the urban areas of society. And it issues in a one world government. And maybe this is done from an artificial standpoint just to scare people into this type of overarching authoritative body, or perhaps there really is something to it. That is for the future to reveal. I don't necessarily know what will happen, but I do know that at least within Judaism, we're very adaptive people, and our beliefs may need some slight adapting, but the core tenets of Torah and Judaism will not change. We will still do our best to keep kosher, and we will still do our best to celebrate Shabbat, so long as we can, so long as the earth is in one piece. If there is alien disclosure, and the sun will rise tomorrow, we may just recognize that we are not alone, and that's okay. And this has major implications, perhaps, from some of the more practical aspects of how we celebrate our faith. Usually, like, we have morning prayer, we have afternoon prayer, and we have evening prayer. And if you are a space tourist and you're traveling around the Earth several times a day, do you have to do multiple sets of prayers per day? And these are practical questions that we have for ourselves as a religion, and the final verdict is yet to be determined. But generally, we see many of these as these practices as you would do your best. You would daven Shachar, Mincha, Marav, morning prayer, afternoon prayer, evening prayer, just once per day. But that doesn't mean that some religious leaders might say, no, every time you circle the earth, that's how many times you have to do it. Everybody's going to have their own opinion. And overall, Judaism does not have one single individual who calls the shots, even within the different Hasidic dynasties. Not necessarily only one person calls the shots, though they do have more of a structured system than many Litvish or mainstream centrist Jewish Orthodox bodies, or especially modern Orthodox bodies. But at the end of the day, individuals are going to be able to make their own decisions, and so will religions. And I think Judaism overall will adapt to this, and I hope in a positive way.
Awesome, man. Yeah. I hope I hope it comes, and that everyone adapts well, and that it, brings humanity together, and not under, an oppressive one world government system, but, some kind of more central, we're all humans. Let's get going and do some more constructive things rather than fight over land and resources and blah, blah, blah. But, Rabbi Rothschild, I want to thank you for coming on today. Definitely would love to have you on again and get deeper into things. And I will have your information in the show notes, the Linktree Rabbi Rothschild link and all that, so people can find you. But I want to thank you again for coming on today and spending some time and doing some interesting work, man.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you to your audience. Thank you for being such a good interviewer and listener, and having such a wonderful platform as your podcast to be able to discuss these things. And yes, absolutely. Anybody who wants to learn more about what I do, the best place to do is right in my Linktree, linktree.com/Rabbi Rothschild. There you will find links to my blog, which is rabbirothschild.medium.com. You'll find links to all my social media. You'll find links to my Discord, discord.me/rabbi. If anybody out there wants to talk about any of the topics that we address, whether it be religion or futurology or alien disclosure, you don't have to be Jewish to connect with me. I am open to all people. I have some very humanist tendencies. And I also want people to know I'm here from a pastoral standpoint. If you ever need someone with whom to talk, I'm available 24 hours a day. So long as I'm awake and available, I will help you through whatever it is you are having, whether it's a personal issue, whether you need job advice, career advice, education advice. There's a topic on your mind that you want to discuss at another level, even relationship advice or whatever it is. I am here to help you. And I want to once again thank you all for this opportunity.
All right, another one in the books. I want to thank you for tuning in and staying all the way to the end. Again, so if you want to get more involved in the show, check out the back channel. Go to patreon.com/bigtruth. If you got any health issues or you want to just live a longer, healthier life, check out my man Christian Yordanov over at livelongerformula.com/bigtruth. If you want artwork of any type, check out tattooflashcollective.com. For more information on the podcast, it's just bigtruthpodcast.com. Do me a favor, follow us on YouTube too. It's at the Big Truth Podcast, I believe. You'll see it's the Big Truth channel. It's where I have the YouTube for the podcast, but also for the Big Truth redacted stuff for people that want to go a little bit deeper into that world. Chopahead.com, and yeah, that's it. This one was a wild one. I always love conversations like this, and the fact that you stuck all the way to the end means you're the absolute best. So until next time, keep it locked.